this is going to be a big test. As big of a test as you can have, laying 10 points is you're hosting this team that's not supposed to be good. They beat you last year. It's sleepy in Detroit. It's 1 p.m. You're riding high. Go take care of fucking business. And I think you do that by being who you are, being aggressive, pounding the rock, the whole thing.
This is especially the sort of spot where you like Dan Campbell as your head coach, because who's not going to forget about last year, Detroit, Carolina? Dan Campbell. Who is going to forget Carolina? The stars of that game, Sam Darnold, Dante Foreman, DJ
gone.
Moore, 2 Bears and a Niner.
Foreman went off that game.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, this is a tailor-made ass-kicking type game, you got to go out and kick their ass.
Go kick their ass.
Week 4 preview.
Week 4. Week 5 preview.
Week 5. Fuck. My notes are all fucked up. Can't count. We're going to do British famous people as our tier system this week. So I don't know what you would propose, but for me, the tier 1 games are George Harrison.
Oh.
My favorite Englishman of all time, probably. And then in the middle, I think King Charles, mid-king, like nothing to get excited about.
I think he'd take that.
Yeah. And then the last ones will be the English paparazzo games.
Okay, mid-tier, Hugh Grant?
Yeah. He was getting down with Elizabeth Hurley for a while.
Idris?
Yeah.
Handsome as hell. Some of the role choices I'm not as sure about.
Okay.
Charlotte Bronte, a perfect middling English person. The low rung, I don't know, Stephen Hawking?
I'll get there. I'll get there.
I mean, I couldn't. I don't understand any of it.
Jack the Ripper, dude. You picked Stephen Hawking over a murderer.
Okay, J.K. Rowling. She doesn't like all people.
She's not positively thought of right now.
Yeah, J.K. is my bottom tier nominee.
Okay, so in the first tier, I guess we got to start with the Sunday Night Football game of the week. This is the first, we just had Bills Dolphins, but this is we're pretty sure if it's not the Eagles, it's going to be these two teams playing for the NFC Championship. And, these are the two teams that have played at times the most dominant. The Eagles have had their struggles, relatively speaking. They're 4-0. But this is a fucking showdown. And I think it starts with, and I like the Niners here.
Niners at home laying 3.5 to the Cowboys. Cowboys just beat the Pats 38-3. Niners took care of the Cardinals.
I just trust the Niners, man. And it's actually a good matchup in the passing game. As we know, San Francisco plays a lot of cover 3. Dak's kind of right in the middle, average against that coverage in rating and adjusted passer rating versus cover 3. If they go play quarters, Dak's pretty average against that too. The ball placement's been a little bit off this year, so can you take advantage of that? And we looked at turnover-worthy plays. Dak's not up near the top, but they're little things that become big things when you play a defense like this, rather. So ball placement's got to be good. Cowboys are going to get the ball out quick. That's what they do really well. Top 10 in success rate in quick game. And I love the interior matchup of Martin, Tyler Smith against Armstead and Hargrave. And this is the first time since 2021 that the Cowboys have had all their guys up practicing together on the offensive line. So it's been a long road, but we're here. We'll see how long these guys can stay healthy together. A lot of gap scheme run. They will try to lean into what they think is probably still an advantage. I don't know if that's true. We'll find out Sunday night. On the other side of things, San Francisco, they have been dominant for a month straight. And Arizona had some success in the run game versus Dallas. They're going to want to look at that deal. What did they do? It's not just Micah Parsons. It's not just throwing the kitchen sink at Micah Parsons, but what did they do to break off some chunk plays and make that a part of the game plan? I think for San Francisco, they're going to find a way to run the ball. Kittle and Christian McCaffrey in the middle of the field on Van Der Esch. I mean, if you look at the Cowboys defensively, they've been outstanding outside the numbers, not so good in the middle of the field. If there's a way to attack a team with coverage linebackers who aren't elite and a pass rush that's great, you're not going to have time to develop these plays outside the numbers, the shots. You pick your spots, but the middle of the field is where you can live, and I think they have a nice advantage. So Kittle, CMC, Debo in certain scenarios. I really like this matchup here. And then Colton McKivitz, who gave up 5 pressures against the Steelers, kind of came out of the gate predictably slow. He's come along a little bit more, so help him out, figure out a way to keep those rushers at bay.
My favorite player in the game is Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah, he's fun. Is that your fact?
Yes, that's my fun fact.
Good.
That's my fun fact. Hey, Eagles are at the Rams.
Yes.
The Rams are plus 4.5. Total is 50. Eagles just squeaked by the Commanders, and the Rams are done with their little tour of the Midwest after playing Cincy.
That's right. They come home, and this is the Eagles' first big road test. And I think it is a big road test because, you go down to Tampa Bay, you go to New England. These teams are not built to really beat the Eagles. And I think, the thing that makes me the most nervous in this game is the state of the secondary for the Eagles. I mean, Bradbury was in the slot for, I think, 61 plays last week. I don't love taking one of your best corners and putting him inside just because. So at some point, Howie Roseman's got to make that adjustment, whether it's through a trade or signing somebody. Can a secondary grow up through a year? Absolutely, especially if Blankenship develops and that sort of thing. But you still need that part of your defense shored up. And Cooper Kupp's back. I think a lot of fantasy owners are, freaking out right now about what does this mean for Puka.
Could that
help Puka?
Or could it screw it up?
I think you'll see a downtick in production, because if there's a big void in the field, the one you want, the guy you want to occupy that void first is Cooper Kupp. You're going to be scheming things up for him. I do think Puka's still going to get numbers and that sort of thing, but the Rams offense, to me, all that motion, all the communication against a group that's really played a lot of different combinations this year, that's a challenge. And when you talk about motion, we always talk about it now weekly on this show. You talk about the Dolphins, you talk about Zay Flowers, jet motion, you talk about teams that aren't using motion. The Eagles aren't using enough motion. If there's one nitpicky thing I have about this offense, it's, where's the pre-snap stuff? And some quarterbacks like a static look before the snap, but on the other side of the ball, when Stafford and these guys get guys running sideways, who are the worst players on the field for you? If you're the Eagles, they're the guys in the back end. So extend the length of that play because the play starts when somebody moves pre-snap. I mean, that's the way you got to think about it. The longer these guys have to perform, and that includes pre-snap, the more miscommunications you're going to have and all that stuff. So the Rams motion, that worries me. Guys got to win up front. Like last week, I thought they took some shit because I was on a couple Commanders podcasts, and they were like, what's up with the Eagles pass rush? And I don't see it that way. I don't worry about the Eagles pass rush because, you come off the Bills game where they had the Bills flu. They get sacked 9 times. That was going to be a pretty unrealistic because when something like that happens, number one, it's probably not going to happen 2 weeks in a row. Number two, the offense is doing everything in its power so that doesn't happen again. I mean, from a mindset standpoint, from a scheme standpoint, and they did take shots, but I thought the Eagles, because of what they had on the back end, had to hang in there for some downs. And the D-line was scratching and clawing. They got to get home this week. McVay is coming for Job's hose, his cattle, the whole thing. So, you weren't here for that. You're nodding your head. Martellus Bennett used to talk about this guy in the Bible named Job.
Staten Job?
No, not Staten Job. He was just a guy named Job, spelled Job.
Oh, Job,
yeah,
sure.
Yeah. And anyways, but that's the whole thing is the Eagles secondary. And then offensively, I think for the Eagles, and I got into doing a big deep dive on kind of that whole Rams defensive system last night because I think there's some plays to be had in the run game. They come out in nickel. They prefer being light. They come out in nickel. They run that penny front, and they run cover 3. So if you look at their defense, there's 3 big guys who are down. There's 2 guys who are overhangs that are kind of these backer types. Although 97, getting these guys in coverage, not a bad idea. But these guys are overhang players for pass rush and to force wide zone. But when they do that, they have to be in cover 3, right? So that one safety is going to be coming down late into the box and playing the backside A gap if that Mike linebacker has to scrape front side to the C. So for people at home who are a little bit lost, in layman's term, you have a safety having to fit up in a big boy position in the run game in cover 3. I think if DeAndre Swift has good vision, good understanding of where the cutback lanes are, there is a lot of yardage to be had against this defense in the run game. If you get the doubles on Aaron Donald and you break that first layer of defense, there's a lot of green grass behind it. So I think look for some explosive plays, look for them to stay in 11 and just pound these guys. Think Minnesota. And then when you get in cover 4, that safety's out of the run fit more so. And you do things like folding that end back into the middle of the defense to take his gap. So whatever coverage the Rams play, I think if they stay light, the Eagles have a big advantage. And that star position is a big one in the Rams defense. The star is basically like the Sam linebacker, right? But it's a little guy, and they've been playing Kobe Durant there. The difference between Kobe Durant and Jalen Ramsey in size and physicality and skill is great. In the passing game, you think about it, but in the run game, like Jalen was asked to do a lot of stuff for them. And I think Kobe Durant, who's had trouble in coverage, is probably the guy you want to look at and say, hey, if this guy's in the box, let me introduce you to Landon Dickerson. So I think you've got to lean on these guys, and you got to be patient, and you got to cash in when you're in the red zone. And I just want to say this. The rush lanes have not been great for the Rams, and I think for Jalen Hurts, who I can tell this year they've tried to say, hey, we're not going to get this guy beat up as much. You have to take opportunities to tuck it and run it this Sunday because there will be those opportunities. Aaron Donald, I watched that Colts game back to front last night. It's one of those games I get to late in the week. And Aaron Donald's still the best interior guy on the planet. And nobody's watching these games, right? But a lot of people are going to be watching this game this Sunday. This dude had a game against the Colts, and it's just his regular day at the office. You're just so desensitized to it, where he was disruptive up and down the line, and then he'd go over and rush on the left tackle. And he looks like an all-pro defensive end when he gets out there. I always told a story about when I was in St. Louis, and I had tweaked my hip flexor in like a scrimmage in camp, and Aaron Donald went out there to play the end in the odd front, and I saw him rush once, and I hobbled back out there because I was like, this guy could take my job too. Yeah. So if I'm Jordan Mailata, who's had a little bit of trouble, the last couple of weeks, I'm going to expect a heavy dose of Aaron Donald in some situations.
If you like this, say I'll be damned. If you don't like it, just stay silent. And since the beginning of last season, only the Bears have seen a higher percentage of their games go over the total than the Philadelphia Eagles.
And I like that. I like that number. It's 50. It started out like a little bit higher, I think. But it's 50.5 or 50 right now.
50. And one note on the Eagles O-line, Cam Jurgens had the foot injury last week. Currently tracking week to week, so we could see Sua Opeta in there.
Yeah.
So he's going to have to step up.
So he's got to step up. You're playing the best guy on the planet. So this is going to be a tight ball game. I do think, with Stafford and his mastery of like zone defense, and if you're in zone, like he could move the ball down the field a little bit. But you have to, and he hasn't had a lot of turnover-worthy plays. You got to take the ball off these guys.
Big opportunity for the Jags to assert themselves.
Yeah.
Tell the world that they are who you thought we were before the season. They're 5.5-point dogs to the Bills. They've moved from Wembley in London to Tottenham in London.
That's right.
I don't know how those tracks differ, but they are different.
All the pitches are slick out there.
Buffalo comes in after the big win over Miami.
Yeah. This is the James Cook game because there was really a British guy named James Cook. He was a cartographer.
Mate, I'm called James Cook.
Yeah, so this is the James Cook game. It's also the Josh Allen game. The guys who have been making the most noise on the field on either side of the ball have obviously been Josh Allen, the quarterback, and Josh Allen, the defensive end. And when the Bills are on the field, you got to pressure these guys. Miami's pressure rate was low. Jags got to get that going. I think Josh Allen's been great, but, Trayvon Walker is a guy that, maybe I was wrong about. I thought he'd be a solid long-time player in the NFL, and I thought that he'd give you enough in the pass game to justify being picked there. But I look at him and I think, like, is he being coached to use his hands? Is he being coached to be the type of player that he's supposed to be? Because I'll watch him an entire game, and he's not sinking a long arm in there with accuracy. He's not throwing his weight around the way that I would because he's a big, strong guy. What is he not? He's not an edge burner. He's not a top of the rush hip guy. He's not explosive off the rock. So, like, would you move him inside some more? Would you say, I don't care if you don't hit an edge at all this game. I want you to collapse the fuck out of the pocket. That's what they need out of this group. They got to rush together. And Walker, I think, sometimes is trying to rush like a guy who's a top 5 pick instead of just doing what you do best, Go dent the pocket. So I think, like, that's what I'm looking for is, can this rush get going? They got going in London, but it was mostly Josh Allen. And, 2 weeks ago, you talk about barely touching C.J. Stroud in a game with a bunch of backups down. You absolutely have to get pressure here. And how are they going to play Diggs? If you're playing one, is it Tyson Campbell? But you don't want to live there. And defensively for the Bills, Jacksonville has been getting it together in the pass game, right? I mean, like, they've started to chip away at the problems that they were having over the first month of the season. It looks like they're ready to break out, but Lawrence has not faced pressure. He's faced pressure 25% of the time. You're going to get Poyer back. The formula last week for the Bills was cover 2, was take away the quick passing game, the perimeter stuff with the flat corner. I think they go more 4 and 6 to combat, like, more the vertical concepts that Doug likes. So you're going to see a different flavor from the Bills this week. And I think the big question is, with Trey White done for the season, like, what's that look like? And there's a big panic, like, I panicked because I like the Bills. I want them to play well. But when you look at it, Elam hasn't gotten on the field. He's a high pick. Obviously, I don't love him. But Dane Jackson started a bunch of games last year. Benford played a lot for them. They might think, hey, we got everything we need here. Let's give these guys a shot. And we're going to get Von Miller back soon. So you take a little bit out of the coverage bucket and you put it in the rush bucket. And I don't know if Von wasn't coming back, if they'd feel that way. I don't know how they feel, but he is coming back soon. And speaking of pass rush, the Jacksonville offensive line has been solid. You get Cam Robinson back. This is the toughest test up front since week 1 for the Bills, and I figure Walker Little probably goes to right tackle. Anton Harris is out. So a lot to look at. When you go to London, I've never heard of a team staying there 2 weeks in a row. I feel like that's got to be an advantage. So maybe something to look at there. And Doug's been there a bunch. Like, I remember us going to London, getting a win. The Jags are basically a home team.
Jags 3-7 in their last 10 when facing a top 10 passing offense.
Yikes.
1-3 Jets at 1-3 Broncos. Broncos favored by 2.5.
So this is the Amy Winehouse game because I think it's going to be drunk.
Went to rehab. Oh, wait, she said nah.
Okay. So Jets and Broncos. You've got Hackett and Peyton. That's why it's in the top tier for me. The storylines. I don't know. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch, but I think I'm going to bet this game big because it's going to be fun, dude. It's just going to be fun. For the Jets, you had a moral victory, right? It didn't feel like as much of a loss as I thought it would, right? Because of how the quarterback played for 58 minutes or something until he made that last mistake. He outplayed Patrick Mahomes. The defense looked better. You have to start faster, the whole thing. But for the Jets, I feel like they're coming off a week where they gained some confidence. It is now or never, right? You're 1-3. The division's going to run away from you. If you can get a win here.
Facing a bad defense.
You're facing a bad defense. If you can get a win here, you can hang in there in the division. And I do think they can score with them. Surtain on Wilson's going to be a great matchup, but really not a bad matchup for the Broncos. The run game advantage for the Broncos. I can't tell for the Jets if it's a product of they've been in 4-minute mode a lot and teams have just been like, we're going to run the ball on them. But they have given up a lot of yardage on the ground. And so for the Broncos, you talked about bringing in guys that are less pass blockers, more pounders in the run game, and they've come along. And I think they actually are 153 yards before contact this year, 154. So they've been getting the job done on the ground. Russ has gotten better. This is a good matchup for God's team, Reed. But either way, I'm pulling for the Jets.
Here's a fun fact. The Bears were blowing out the Broncos last week before the Broncos got together.
No question. I see this as a spot that the Jets come out on fire a little bit. And if they don't, it's time to pack it up. Because if you can't win this game, when the head coach insults your coordinator and Hackett's coming back to Denver and he wants to make a statement, and Zach Wilson's got confidence and the defense did some good things last week. If you can't win this game, you got no business being talked about.
That's the ultimate clapback to win with Zach Wilson.
It'd be huge.
And I don't think it was as much as the Broncos got it together as much as the Bears fumbled it.
Bears
They
started
did
fucking
indeed.
it up.
They did
Big time.
indeed. The Titans are at the Colts. Titans are favored by 2.5.
I love this game.
Totals 43.
I love this game. This is a Dua Lipa game. I love this game. I love a rock fight. I love a rock fight. This is my rock fight game of the week.
I love that Indy quarterback.
Yeah, I do too, bro. Hey, listen, speaking of the tape I watched last night, Colts Rams, the zip coming off the fucking with the ball comes off his hands and it looks like it was photoshopped. Like they did some post edit to make the ball look faster. I mean, it's so much so that like it reminds me of when Stafford, we were talking about this earlier, Stafford when he was at Georgia, they say like he had to take something off it. The receivers, they couldn't play him because the receivers didn't have good enough hands to catch his piss missiles. Well, it's the same thing with Anthony Richardson. The ball flies off his hand. And I feel really good about him as a quarterback in the league. Now, they didn't throw the ball a lot last week. This is a week where they're going to have to throw the ball more. But the run game is Taylor back. You know, like that might matter, but 3.9 a carry versus the Titans. Like they've bottled him up in the past as opposed to 5.9 a carry and 6.2 against Jacksonville and Houston. What's it going to look like, though, for the Titans now that you got that big son of a gun back there to run quarterback run with? It adds another element of the game. When you're playing a big, strong quarterback and you're a defensive lineman in the NFL, number one, coaches are freaking out about rush lanes and that sort of thing, but they're also freaking out about the quarterback run game, the read option. Coaches in the NFL have not decided how they want to play this thing. Like, they have not made a unilateral decision where it's just like plug and play. Every week they've got new stupid ideas. They stress out all week. The whole D-line room's running around with a tight asshole all week. So I think that's going to be a key. What does it look like? We've seen what it looked like in the past when Taylor plays the Titans, but this QB run game is different now. So I think for the Titans, it's going to be fucking with the big fella's eyes and just late rotations, varying coverage, the whole thing. And for the Colts defense, you got to make Tannehill throw the ball outside the numbers. 102 passer rating, middle of the field, 53 outside the numbers. And the Colts have struggled inside the numbers. So that's going to be where the Titans attack them. And I love Buckner. I love Stewart. The guys inside make it a top 10 run defense. But Kyron Williams last week went for a bunch of yards after contact. So they're going to be motivated to stop this run. Colts defense doesn't really have a guy to take care of Dillard. And I mean that in like to expose Dillard, because most teams that they've played so far have had an edge guy that could get out there and make his life hell. I don't know if the Colts have that guy. So point for the Titans and Tannehill versus zone, Gus Bradley. I feel like it's a good matchup for them.
I love zagging on the Titans every week.
Yeah.
Every week.
You do.
They lost to the Saints. They beat the Chargers. They lost to the Browns 27-3. They beat the Bengals 27-3.
It's going to be profitable at the end of the day if you do it every week.
Colts opened at -1. Now they're plus 2.5. And I'm sorry for saying Bengals. I tried to say Bengals, but it's kind of a underratedly hard word.
For sure.
Bengals. Chiefs are at the Vikings. Vikings are +4. Totals 52.5. Vegas knows something a little bit. You think this would be a point or two higher?
I gotta feel like in situations like this, we're kind of betting the logo. You know, like we're betting the quarterback, we're betting the logo, we're betting the Vikings schedule. And I've been the biggest like hold your horses on the Vikings guy, but they play close games. And I think, you know, like while blitzing Mahomes is a really bad idea. By the way, 45 quarterbacks have been blitzed at least 800 times since 2006. Mahomes ranks top 5 in PFF passer rating. He's up there with all these Hall of Famers. So you don't want to do it. But Flores isn't going to lay off. If you look back, I think it was 2020, I had Nolan take a look at this thing because they played Dolphins and Chiefs, and he blitzed the fuck out of them. Now, they were a little bit different kinds of pressures, but Mahomes threw 3 picks. Three picks. Now, two of them were tipped.
Yep.
But it's not like they got their lunch eaten. You know, what'd you see when you looked at that?
Yeah, from the pressures. I mean, a lot of it was kind of those simulated looks. So you're looking at 5 guys in the line of scrimmage, and then they're kind of going throughout the course of the game. They're changing who the rushers are, who the droppers are, just to give them different looks, especially in that short area of the field that he likes hitting with those guys. So, I think even this time, the way Flores has been going this season, he might just really dial it up, get away from the simulated stuff, and just go after him.
Yeah, and I also think, if you look at when they don't blitz, Davenport and Hunter have good matchups.
Right.
So, like, you want to beat this team, you got to beat those tackles. And if you want to beat this team, you have to be careful about the types of pressures and the timing of the pressures that you run against the Chiefs. So the Vikings, I think, have a fighting chance in this game. The Vikings run game can't get going, and this is going to be a tough week to do it. I think what's interesting about the Chiefs offense, and, we're bouncing back to them for a second, but they've had a hard time replacing Tyreek Hill. Like, they've made it work, but at times, like, over time, it's just been like, it would have been better to have him. That whole offensive line kind of got cycled through the last couple of years in the wake of that Super Bowl in Tampa Bay. They've done a really good job of retooling up front on the interior. I think the tackles are a little bit of a wild card this year, but the interior of that line allows them to run that gap scheme stuff, to pound teams, and I think this is a perfect situation to do that. When you have these blitzes, Bieniemy is one of the best screen guys in the league. He's been crushing in Washington. Can you scheme up good screens to take advantage of some of these ill-advised pressures?
Madison was 17 for 95.
Yeah.
Akers a little bit of a change up, 5 for 40 for Minnesota and Carolina.
Game day is the perfect pizza day. So make Little Caesars the official pizza sponsor of the NFL, part of your game day. Order online during our Pizza pregame 1 hour before and 3 hours after NFL kickoffs, plus all day Sunday, to have your NFL game day covered. Choose your favorite Little Caesars pizza or pick the toppings you crave. It's a pizza win. And speaking of winning, everyone scores with convenient delivery or our in-store pizza portal pickup. So grab some friends, order your Little Caesars, and enjoy during the games.
Mid-tier, this King Charles, Hugh Grant, Charlotte Bronte tier is led off by a dynamite game.
Dude, I had to put it in the mid. I thought this slate was shit, but the more I looked at it, I kind of liked some of these games.
A good Houston Texan team going to Atlanta. Falcons are favored by 1.5 coming back from London.
All right. By the way, the unders hit 8-2 the Falcons' last 10 games. Okay. We'll start with that because the offense is the problem here. I don't think the Falcons are bad defensively. I actually think they're pretty solid. Do I want more out of their pass rush? Yeah. Are they going to need to win this week? Yeah. And we'll talk about that. But Falcons offense, you think about a team with a good run setup. Like they've been running into loaded boxes and still having success. You'd like to get into the play action stuff, but Ritter hasn't been able to do that. 51% completion rate against play action or when they go play action. And first drives, like they start slow. First drive so far this year, 3 and outs and a pick. In the first half, they're 3-9 per play. I mean, it's just not good. At what point are we talking about trading Pitts? I don't think it's a good idea because whoever you're going to have next year is going to need that guy. But people are going to talk about it because you're not even looking his way. So, I mean, like, you got to start faster. You got to get your playmakers involved. A big lift for Houston is getting Perriman back. I really like him. And then the one we didn't even think about, Tavier Thomas, the nickel, will be back. So that's a big deal. And you got to wonder, the wild card in this game is how long before we see Heineke?
May I circle back?
Yes.
Kyle Pitts, 11 catches, 121 yards on the year. Is he open all the time?
I think he's pretty open.
So it's on the quarterback. It's not.
I do think it's on the quarterback. I think it's partially on the offense because ultimately, as a head coach who's the designer of all your concepts, you could be like, hey, if you're going to do one thing this week, you're going to get the ball to Kyle Pitts. And I just don't feel like that conversation has happened.
Well, they had the conversation. They just inserted Jonnu Smith instead of Kyle Pitts.
Now, the Texans offense, man, if the Texans can play like they've been playing, Atlanta can't keep up. And there's reason to believe that they can continue to do that. Stroud has been killing it, and the guys outside have been Woods, Dell, Mechie. I mean, like, they're good players, but they don't have, like, a world beater number one. they've had to play to this point basically with one starter from the beginning of the year, and that's Shaq Mason. Now they're getting Tunsil and Titus Howard back, and that leads me to my next point is you got to get the run game going. And I think there's nothing wrong with Damian Pierce. Bobby Slowick knows how to call offenses. I just think the personnel up front has not been as good in moving bodies. I mean, you think about Tunsil, you think about Titus, they're big cats. You know, you can get movement. Like, I'd like to see them getting that run game going. And for the Falcons, the D-line has to get home. Okay, you added pieces, and I worried about this because when you go through the preview, you're like, oh, they added Campbell, they added Dupree, they added Onyemata. You know, they've added guys, but does the sum of the parts add up? You know, and are these the guys that you associate with the names anymore? I mean, like, I think Bud Dupree's a good player. I think Calais Campbell still got it, but they don't have a dynamic number one rusher outside Grady Jarrett. And if you watch their tape, I don't feel like they win a lot of rushes. They have to manufacture pressure. And so, you know, like, I think Stroud might see more pressure than he has so far this year. They might bring the heat. And one thing you got to beware of if you're the Texans and Stroud is that safety back there, the veteran defensive backfield. Remember what Bates did to Bryce Young? This is a slick guy, so you got to watch him, and you're going to see lots of motion, lots of free releases because they do play man. They play cover one, top 5 in the league, and I think Tank Dell's your guy this weekend. So if you need a man beater, you got to go there. Get that run game going.
Fun fact, Younghoe Koo will hit a 41-yard field goal to win the game in Atlanta on Sunday.
Hopefully we can use that again.
An AFC North team is laying 4 points
what if
on
they win
the
by one?
road. I know.
Uh-huh.
That is very possible.
Yeah.
On the road.
Yeah.
The Ravens are at the Steelers. It's +4. Total's 38. Hey.
A lot of people betting the Steelers. Kenny
Yeah.
Pickett's not down, I guess. I guess he's
TBD.
Yeah. You call an ambulance, but not for me.
Right.
Call it for Matt Canada. The offense is still the offense. I worry about this group matching up against Baltimore, who's been very good. But if you want to keep the points down, it's gonna start with stopping that run, right? You know, I think this is a different challenge this week for Baltimore. We've been talking so highly of what Monken's done in that run game. But this is like where last week we talked about them taking advantage of vertical seams because of the aggression that Cleveland plays with. Pittsburgh is more of a read technique front where you're going to have to create horizontal schemes. And I think Justice Hill's got to have a big day. And I think Lamar just needs to take care of the football. You know, like you're going to get your opportunities against these DBs. I mean, Pat Peterson has not had a great year. They needed him to. And I think you're going to have your shots, but the run game is something that you got to hone in on, and it's got to continue to be a weapon for you.
Last year, Baltimore won in Pittsburgh 16-14. That was a Trubisky-led Steelers team. New York Giants.
Yeah, sorry. We got to talk about the Giants.
They're at the Dolphins. Giants are getting 11.5 points.
I think the Giants are going to score more points this week. For one, Saquon's back, according to some beat writers. We're not sure. But I got to think he's coming back soon. We've hit rock bottom up front.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, like we've got Evan Neal talking about fans flipping burgers. That doesn't go over well for LeBron. It's not going to go over well for you. Like, you can't pull that card, especially when you're struggling. And I can tell, like, you know, that's where you feel like your back's against the wall. All that pressure's coming down on you. The offensive line had a terrible day. They got a lot of the blame for Daniel Jones's bad play. And Daniel did not play great in his own right. So they need to step up. This is how bad it is for the Giants right now because I don't want to spend – I gave you 20 minutes on that Giants offense on Monday. You can go back and take a listen or a look if you want to go to YouTube. It's on there. But Bellinger got hurt on the fucking tush push, dude. Yep. They're trying to do what the division rivals do, and they're getting guys hurt. Like, it's just they can't buy a bucket right now. That's just a sign of how bad things are.
John Michael Schmitz, the center, got hurt too.
Yeah,
same play.
Let's do the same play. We're going to do what the team in division does. Now, the Dolphins offense, obviously, we know about them. We know it's a bad idea to bring pressure, but Don Martindale is going to Don Martindale. The defensive coordinator for the Giants is going to blitz, dude. Him and B. Flo are going to blitz. And I think, You know, like if you want to win this game, if you want to hang in this game, the Dolphins are a fucking explosive team, but Tua's been through a lot. You know, whether it was Brian Flores, the concussions, the whole thing, the pressure, guys like me saying he's not good enough. I'm sure he puts a lot of pressure on himself. Last week was not his best day. It wasn't the offense's best day. That baggage can hang around early in a game even when you go back home and the home crowd's like you go 3 and out or you throw a pick or that sort of thing. Like, I don't think it's likely, but I think the Giants, if they want to win this game, have to be really strong to start defensively. And so those blitzes have to get home. But I think the thing you can't forget is the Dolphins' offensive line, who's now without Armstead again, is still the Dolphins' offensive line. And we've had a month to look at it. Teams haven't gotten a lot of pressure. If I'm the Giants, Kayvon Thibodeau, who had a really nice game the other day rushing, okay, that got lost in the whole shuffle. I want to shout him out. They got to win rushes, okay? Like, remember that Commanders game last year where Kayvon went off?
Yep.
Got to be one of those games like that for you. Because Dexter Lawrence, your fucking game wrecker, go wreck the game. You know, like, don't forget they have guys up front that can win rushes, and they've got to do it early because you don't know how the Dolphins are going to respond if this game's muddy early.
Saints are at the Patriots. Patriots are 0-2 at home. Some are blaming that new fake lighthouse.
Mm-hmm.
Pats lost by 35 last week. Saints lost by 17. Your guess is as good as mine.
Dude, you know, here's what I actually like the Patriots here. I do, and I think you might too. But
I lean that way.
You know, it's a situation. The key for me, the number one stat that jumps out is the Saints are 32 in the red zone this year. So for the Patriots, you played the Dolphins, who are a juggernaut, and you say, hey, we're going to make them earn it and try to win in the red zone. And that kind of worked. If the offense could cash in, they kept the points down. You should be able to keep the points down against this team. If they get down to the red zone 4 times, kick 3 field goals, score a touchdown, this offense should be able to score 20 points and beat this team. So for the Patriots, you always stress red zone. You always stress, situational football. You have to win in those moments. And, yeah, I know they're down Judon. I know they're down Gonzalez. I know you got 2 of the Joneses on IR. John Jones has been limited. J.C. Jackson, who knows? Like, if he plays, whatever. They just shipped him from L.A. He should be able to pick up that defense pretty quickly. And he's probably as happy as anybody to be back in New England. But I think also with that deal there, it's kind of funny. Bill, I think, makes these trades sometimes just to be like, I win.
Yeah.
Like maybe he didn't even need J.C. Jackson. Even if he didn't, he'd still probably make the trade just to fucking lord that over the Chargers. I think Uche is going to have to step up. I can't wait to see Keon White apply pressure, show what he's made of, because he might play some more snaps. And Uche is going to have to be good in the run game because that's the one place that he doesn't have to get relied upon as much as Judon. And I think if somebody's going to lose a dynamic rusher, New England is strangely one of those teams that can afford it because they can manufacture pressure with the best of them. Even the guys that get a lot of sacks there, you look back at the tape, a lot of them are on loops and simulated pressures and things that Bill cooks up, and then you got to make the layup. So I think against Trevor Penning, you might mix up some Keon White, you might mix up some Uche, and try to vary the looks that this guy gets, not only in scheme but in personnel, to try to, because that's what Bill does. He's like, who's the guy? Let's attack this guy. Let's make this guy work. And I think up front, it'll be interesting to see what he does. Now, the Saints have not run the ball well with Kamara back even, but I think with Kamara back, you can turn a lot of your perimeter quick game, your screen stuff into your run production. And I think another thing the Pats have to watch out for is special teams. They have struggled there. That's uncharacteristic. The Saints have stolen plays there. And offensively, man, Mac Jones got to grow up. Okay, like, it's just time, dude. And I stood up for him last year with the Zappy thing. I know I said he was dirty a couple weeks ago. He is. But I still think there's a decent quarterback in there. But it can't be like last week. He's up near the top in turnover-worthy plays. I think he's tied for 1 with Desmond Ridder. So they can't turn the ball over. They need more out of the run game. They have to do Patriot things, And for a team that's not great, you'd think that formula is easier to attain than some of the formulas other teams are using, right? Because it's about the scheme, it's about the coaches, it's about situational football, it's about controlling the things we can control.
Max turning balls over during the play and after the play.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good one.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
Pats have won 8 of their last 9 outright when favored. Now, that was great when they opened as
That's
a 2.5
interesting.
point favorite, but now they're a 1.5.
I'm going to bet
dog.
them.
1.5 dog.
Yeah, I'm going to bet them. I hate buying tickets. I've been playing my whole life, never had to worry about buying tickets. The ticket part is stressful. The game's stressful. The ticket part's really stressful. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. And with the Game Time app, it's easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. If I'm trying to see the monster trucks for my kids or Willie Nelson for me and my kids, I can find it all in the Game Time app. Game Time's the place for last-minute ticket deals. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has the deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. The Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code GREENLIGHT for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code GREENLIGHT for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
All right, we're into the Neville Chamberlain, J.K. Rowling, paparazzo tier of games. Before the season, what would you have put the line at? Cincinnati traveling to Arizona. Cincy by 13.
9.5, 10.
It's 3.
Yeah.
The line is 3.
And for good reason, man. And I actually think this game's going to be interesting because this is like gut check time for the Bengals. Like, they are not a good football team right now, and Joe Burrow's not healthy and all that stuff. And I also think it's interesting. I sometimes I'll hop on YouTube, and there's a lot of really good like former player intel on quarterback play and scheme. And JT O'Sullivan, who played in the NFL, has his quarterback school YouTube page, which I think is very good. You should check it out. He might be talking nonsense, but he could fool me, right? Mm-hmm. But, it's not all on Joe. There are situations where obviously we know the rush is unrelenting, and I think this is the week where you get a little respite from that. But I went back and watched that first game this year, and it was the Browns. He was running for his life, but he was running for his life. He was getting out of the pocket, trying to avoid the rush. As the season's gone on, I've seen less of that. And you got to wonder with a calf injury, is it just getting worse? But JT brought up a great point. Like that first red zone trip, where if you go get points, you feel pretty good, because they look good that first drive until they get in the red zone. They run double slant, and Joe almost throws a pick six, and everybody's like, Joe, what are you doing with the ball? But listening to a quarterback talk about it, JT was saying how the number 2 is not pressing that defender vertically enough to clear him out. So the slants kind of run flat, it's run too shallow. And what that allows the 2 to do is sit right in that throwing window and pass off number 2. And so it's an intricate thing that when you watch it on TV, you're like, Joe, what the fuck are you doing with the ball? But if guys are not running routes with precision, sometimes your only opportunities to score, you have to be perfect. And, that could be a touchdown, but it's damn near a pick six going the other way. And so I think when you look at Joe, it's the scheme that needs to improve. He needs to improve. His health needs to improve. But the guys around him need to improve too. The offensive line needs to improve. The whole thing. So I think this is a week that they can work on the stuff under less stress that they need to work on. I mean, I think as good as the Cardinals have been, I don't think of them as some scary pass rush team. So for Joe, let's take advantage of the opportunity to go through some of your stuff and to work your stuff and to stay upright. And Higgins and Taylor Britt didn't practice Wednesday, so you got some issues. I honestly worry about that defense a little bit too. James Conner might have worked his way out of Arizona. He might be playing his way to a ticket out of that place. Somebody might go snag him before the deadline. I think this is going to be a tight game. And ultimately, it is the Stephen Hawking game because Joe can't move.
The Bengals.
He's nodding his head back. It's true.
He's also, because he's deceased, is what you're saying?
Well, no. Before that, this is the point in the movie where because early in the movie, he's like Joe Burrow. But then late in the movie, he's got to just rely on his mind. And I think Joe's got to rely on his mind this week.
Bengals have covered just 2 of their last 8 warm weather games. And this is considered a warm weather game.
Yep.
Monday Night Football, elite uni matchup. Packers are at the Raiders.
That's about it, dude. Here's what I'm wondering, because the Raiders, I don't want to say they're irrelevant, but they're irrelevant. You know, like they're not going anywhere this year. And the Packers, they're trying to build something. And so, like, these are teams going in different directions. I think the Packers at times this year have felt like we got our guy. The offense almost runs better with him. And then you run into a buzzsaw in Detroit, and we'll talk about them in a second. You've got 10 days here. And the way it is in the NFL is like you get a bye week, you get a mini bye. There's some self-scout that goes into the equation. Like you've got some breathing room. We're going to spend a lot of time on the Raiders, but we're also going to spend a little time on what we've done. We're going to self-scout. Jordan Love can sink into the chair a little bit and watch film. They can look at ways that they can get a leg up. And I think like it'll be really interesting to me looking at the Packers. Do they do anything different out of this break? What improves for them? I think they've started really slow in their games. I think they've been sloppy. They're near the bottom of the league in a bad way in penalties. They're 8 penalties a game or something like that. And they've had them in key moments. So special teams has been awful. I'm wondering what's going on with that because that's like a Packers curse. But you had Rich Bisaccia join up. He's everybody's favorite coach. They still haven't been able to fix it over the course of the last couple of years. So I think of Matt LaFleur as a really good coach, but he's got to step up. You know, I'm not saying he's in trouble. If I'm a Packers fan, I feel safe having him as my head coach. But the penalties ultimately fall on the head coach. They fall on preparing these guys. And then, you know, like if you think you got your guy and you have a roster that's kind of on par with what you've had the last couple of years with Aaron Rodgers, maybe better in some spots, you have to be able to take this next step. So I think this break is going to be illuminating for me. This is a game you got to feel like you're supposed to win. Can you go do it?
They went into halftime on Thursday night down 27-3.
They were down 17-0 for almost the whole game against the Saints. It's not sustainable.
Yep. And the Panthers are at the Lions. Finally, the Panthers are at the Lions. Lions laying 10 points.
Yeah, listen, I think this has just got to be the Lions. You betcha Dan Campbell still feels that fucking game last year. I mean, I know it was like Matt Rule. I know it was different players. I know they've shored up some of the issues they had. But they went to Carolina, and they needed to win that game, and they got fucking pummeled. And I feel like if you're Dan Campbell coming off a week where you go up to Lambeau, you run for 200 yards, what I want to see is I want to see us show up and assert our physicality, dictate the violence in this game. You got those big cats up front. You can move these guys, just bludgeon them. And Goff plays well against zones, so like this is a good matchup for him. You get Jamison Williams back. His suspension shortened from 6 to 4. It's like a free play, you know? It's like, oh, look what I get to. So Lions defense doesn't blitz a lot, but this week, I think you gotta bring a little heat, and you gotta run some games up front because the Panthers have had trouble picking them up. I mean, like all year long, anything with movement, they've struggled. Look at Harrison Smith last week. He's got a hat trick. That's because you're not good at picking up blitzes. You're not good at picking up second-level rushers, and I think you got to bring some heat. Now, I love what they're doing up front. Hutchinson, of course, has been dominant, 27 pressures through 4 games, and I think he's even better inside. So, you know, as you watch Aiden Hutchinson, keep an eye on when they kick him inside. Aleem McNeil has been great. Love watching him, but mainly for the Lions. You know, Dan Campbell 2 weeks ago after that loss said, we need to get back in the mud, right? Like, and he's a sicko. He likes being in the mud. Like, he wants to be disrespected. but then you go win that game. You get the monkey off your back up at Lambeau Field. What kind of team are you? Because good teams go and they handle their business the next week against teams you're supposed to beat. And whether you're in the mud or out of the mud, you got to play like you're in the mud. And I think for them, this is going to be a big test. As big of a test as you can have, laying 10 points is you're hosting this team that's not supposed to be good. They beat you last year. It's sleepy in Detroit. It's 1 p.m. You're riding high. Go take care of fucking business. And I think you do that by being who you are, being aggressive, pounding the rock, the whole thing.
This is especially the sort of spot where you like Dan Campbell as your head coach, because who's not going to forget about last year, Detroit, Carolina? Dan Campbell. Who is going to forget Carolina? The stars of that game, Sam Darnold, Dante Foreman, DJ
gone.
Moore, 2 Bears and a Niner.
Foreman went off that game.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, this is a tailor-made ass-kicking type game, you got to go out and kick their ass.
Go kick their ass.